Southeast Regional Task Force under the command of Regional Chief Hines, and so we work parallel together. As long as the three inmates remain together, and we had information to suggest that they were, and I will talk about that later, then those two task forces will continue to work together for that one effort. But at any time, if Stevenson had broke away from that group, then it would have become on Chief Stevens, who would be the incident commander on tracking Stevenson down. He was our main target. That's who we was focused on. And Chief Hines, working with the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office task force, would concentrate on the other two. At around 11 p.m., information from the DeKalb County recorded inmate lines, when they determined that these individuals was gone, led them to an individual who had made contact or was contacted by Stevenson to meet them outside the jail at a location when they facilitated this escape. That was done, and yes, that was done successfully, and they were picked up by a gentleman, you'll find that in the report later. This thing gets very voluminous. So they were picked up and they was taken to the girlfriend's house of inmate Minor. Inmate Minor's girlfriend then contacted a Lyft to pick up the three inmates and transport them to an address in Florida. That took place. We were able to, using the intelligence of the Marshal Service, track that movement. No need to talk about how and what we use, just we're the U.S. Marshals and we have ways to track. And so we tracked them all the way to Florida and made the arrests in the metropolitan Miami area. Those individuals were picked up there without incident. As you can imagine, the Lyft driver is very traumatized by this. She's being interviewed by the FBI for additional kidnap charges, as well as other things of that nature. So the system worked the way it's supposed to work. It would not work this well had it not been for the great relationship and partnership that we have with local law enforcement partners, state law enforcement partners, as well as our federal partners as well. So that's it in a nutshell, and as we take questions, at least from my end, please understand this investigation is ongoing. We want to make sure that the U.S. Attorney, as it relates to Stevenson, has an airtight case, and so you're going to get a lot of, I can't answer that question for you as we go through this motion. So with that, I turn it back over to Chief of the DeKalb County Jail.
Thank you, sir. We will entertain questions at this time.
Can you tell us exactly how these inmates were able to get outside of the jail building itself?
Okay. First, let's start by saying that we operate a 30-plus-year-old facility. And as with the building of such, some of the infrastructure can be compromised with effort by the inmates. That being the case in this instance, we would not like to be more specific as not to give out the person's ideas of how to further compromise this building. But we're making some adjustments, being assisted by the county to shore up the infrastructure and to make adjustment with our policies regarding to this incident.
Chief Maddox mentioned some changes.
That's Sheriff Maddox.
Yes, excuse me, Sheriff Maddox mentioned some changes that you'd like to make. By the way, can you tell us exactly what you're looking to change about the infrastructure of the jail without giving away how these inmates are able to get out?
To be honest, at this time, we're not discussing those things because we're ongoing, doing those evaluations and making sure that we're doing a comprehensive job in regards to that.
Can you clarify, Marshall did talk about that there was a phone call. So are we saying that one of the inmates called someone to pick them up and coordinate with the girlfriend of one of the other suspects? Can you explain that again, how that worked and how you were able to, monitor the phone call, and that's how you knew this was going on?
Okay, if you're familiar with the jail environment, all of our phone calls between inmates and citizens is recorded. So we utilized our internal intelligence unit to start to review calls that would have been made by those particular inmates or just calls that were made out of that particular pod, which is a normal standard operating procedure.
DeKalb County just opened up the new real-time crime center. Did that play a role in this search? And if it did, was it an effective role?
In this particular instance, the components of having the U.S. Marshals involved, it didn't, necessitate us using the real-time communication center. So we didn't utilize it this time, but we expect in the near future, in any incident that we have, we'll be using it. But the fact that our federal partners needed to be brought into this, it was more along the operation of the federal partners and us.
What was the clue that the infrastructure was compromised? Was this based on when you're looking to see how they got out, or was it based on, say, listening to the phone calls? Was this something that you were somewhat aware of and someone picked at it and was able to get out? I mean, what are we talking? When were you aware that this particular piece of infrastructure was compromised?
It was discovered when our officer was doing his feeding times. So once he entered the cell and did his preliminary check, he was able to discover that a portion of the cell had been compromised. We subsequently started to do our investigation at that time.
Chief, can you explain the timeline for us? So you guys figured out that these 3 men were missing sometime overnight, but when did you actually notify the public? Because, I know different news outlets were calling to say, hey, can you confirm this? And do you believe the fact that the public was not made aware earlier that it could have put people in danger?
It's our assertion that the public was made aware as soon as we were made aware. Now we had probably a small amount of time where we had to assess what we actually had. You just can't go out there and start to sound the alarm without figuring out what you have. The difference between the time that they exited the facility and the time that we got onto it, there was some distance in between there because of the activities that were going on. If you know about a jail, we executed one activity, then we come back several hours later and do our next round. So that's the distance that people may think that we didn't notify anybody, but you have to understand that there's not an omnipresence in that cell. So that's the gap there. Then once we realized in that amount of time that they were out or that they subsequently were missing, then we had to figure out if they were still in the building somewhere, and then figure out, once we figured out they had exited the building, then that's when we went forward with alerting the public.
How long was that gap, though?
I think it probably was about 4 hours, but like I said, there was a lot going on in between that.
Chief, do you have a general statement about safety? I understand that the sheriff did say that the jail is now secure, and you are going to be implementing some things to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But since the jail is now being secure, has anything been implemented already?
Okay, we repaired the area that was compromised, and we're looking at other areas that are similar to that to fortify them to make sure that they're not compromised in the same manner. That's the thing I can tell you right now. We've elevated our round pattern just for a sake, so we're just doing more rounds right now till we get those other things fortified.
My last question is just speaking to community and safety, because we're seeing a lot of these escapes going on in the metro area. Are you guys partnering with other police agencies so that you guys can kind of do something to kind of bring the number down with escapees happening?
Okay, unfortunately, our main focus is the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office. And as the sheriff spoke to briefly, we're always in the business of partnering with our local agencies, the DeKalb County PD, and all of the municipalities. Anytime there's an instance like this, we lean on those individuals to try to assist us. We think we do a fairly good job on a day-to-day basis, making sure that our facility is safe, and we'll continue to do that.
And the marshal
And
clarified.
Chief, not to belabor the point, but, we knew about this escape for about 6 hours before it was actually confirmed. Can you explain why that happened?
As I said before, we gave out the information as soon as we understood exactly what we had. We will never give out information prematurely because that only causes chaos. So some of your time frames may not align with the time frame that we have in order to give the public the best information and to be able to execute a plan. So those are the differences. But what we will stand on is the fact that we always have the DeKalb County citizens, the citizens of the metro Atlanta area, and the citizens of Georgia at our forefront of our thought process. And we're going to always get the information out at the best time that we can do so. Sometimes that won't align with what the public wants, sometimes that won't align with what the media wants, but I guarantee you it aligns with what the situation dictates.
Was anyone hurt while these guys were out?
Not in to our knowledge.
Can you clarify, Stevenson Charles, I know there were two people that were state inmates and others were federal inmates. Can you clarify that? Because Stevenson Charles pled guilty in Gwinnett County. Can you explain why he was in a jail, which is generally for people who are awaiting trial? Can you explain that?
Okay, as most people know, individuals just don't perpetrate crimes in one area. So he had been held accountable for his crimes in Gwinnett and his federal crimes, but that doesn't mean he was going to dodge the crimes in DeKalb County. So he was extradited back to our facility to be held accountable for those charges or those crimes that he perpetuated in our area.
Even with a life sentence?
That occurs.
Will these inmates be extradited back to the state of Georgia to stand trial? Are all three of them in Broward County right now?
You want to speak to that, Marshall?
They will eventually come back to Georgia to face the state charges here in Georgia. Go to your point, sir. Stevenson was in this facility on a production order to...
Alrighty, a press conference there held earlier today. Those 3 inmates recaptured now after they escaped from the DeKalb County jail there in Georgia.